This Sunday marks just the latest chapter in the storied rivalry between Dublin and Tyrone. It's one that stretches back many years, but we're not going to look back on even just earlier on this championship or 2003. We're going back to 1995. We're joined on the line by Seamus McCallan, the ex-Tyrone defender, and a man who had a fairly eventful afternoon on September 17th, 1995.
Paul Beelan kicked into the inside forward line, and here's Jason Sherlock on a favourable touch that time. Still Sherlock, and he'll complete the race in there. And Charlie Redmond has scored, injuring himself in the process. He made light of that. There was just a little misunderstanding in the Tyrone backline. Jason Sherlock in initially, and Charlie, who's had many disappointments in All-Ireland finals, he was in here. Watch Jason Sherlock just touch it forward under the falling body of McConnell, and in came Charlie, and he was not going to be stopped. He's gone back to talk to Charlie Redmond again. Did he in fact send it off a few minutes ago, and Charlie continued? This is very confusing. I've never seen anything like this in an All-Ireland final. I think he has sent him off. So Dublin are indeed down to 14 players.
Team now Tyrone, this is for they're up to Dublin now. With a soft little team, often play better when they are down to 14 men.
The voices of Ger Canning and Mick O'Dwyer there on that day back in 1995, describing the eventful afternoon that the man to my left had that day. Charlie Redmond, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
I'd imagine you still look back on that day with both degrees of fondness and regret. There was video as well that I was watching earlier on today of you speaking to, I think it was to Ger Canning in juries after the game, after the celebrations, and he's asking you about the sending off, and which we'll get to in a moment. But at the time, you can see it was still hours after the event rankling with you, and the I suppose the timeline of events and how they'd passed had kind of gotten embedded in your mind even then, and what Paddy Russell had said to you and all that kind of thing, and you didn't seem the happiest man celebrating in All-Ireland, I'll say that much.
Well, I've said many times previously, I woke up that morning wanting to win an All-Ireland, and hopefully when I go back to bed that evening I'd have an All-Ireland medal in my back pocket, and thankfully I did. Now, there was a few pitfalls on the way that afternoon, but it was a strange day. There's no doubt, I can't deny that. It didn't go along the way I would have chosen it to go. But listen, the end is all that matters, and we won the All-Ireland, and my getting sent off, fades into insignificance compared to what was achieved, and that was the All-Ireland. Yeah,
and it was ending a 12-year wait for the Dubs as well to win an All-Ireland. Shamey, you had a pivotal role to play in that goal, in that you were chasing down Jason Sherlock, who was the star of the summer that day, and you were pretty much doing all you could to stop him from scoring a goal, and in essence it ended up falling to the feet of the gentleman to my left here.
Yeah, it was strange the way it worked out, because it was a long ball initially that was played, and it was, I think, a couple of fellas contested maybe, but Faye Devlin was the man ultimately who was the defender. I thought had his eye on the ball, and as such had the ball under his arm, and the ball fell out again, and so then it was loose, and it was right, okay, plan A is gone. So it was a sprint to get the ball. I was going for ball, and if I hadn't got a foot to it, it was hopefully going to end outside the Sunset Bar, hopefully, but it was a sprint, and at that case it was all in. I saw Finbar coming, I saw Jason coming from the left, and the collision, the ball went somewhere, but I didn't see it, and then as it worked out, it fell between Paul and Charlie, and Charlie's a strong fella, and Paul Devlin he had that bit of height and probably strength on Paul, and it was a battle to get the ball in across the goal. So unluckily it happened the way it did, and there was always going to be fine margins in the game, but it was what it was at that stage.
I was watching back some of the build-up and some of the chat afterwards around the final, Shamey, and there was talk that I was watching Michael Lester put it to Colin O'Rourke on the day, that heading into the final, a lot of people, even the fact that Tyrone had come through the shark-ridden waters of Ulster that year, which, as we know, were utterly incredible given the run that Ulster football had been on, particularly in All-Ireland finals in the previous 4 years. People were still writing off Tyrone going into that game in 95 and saying that, it was going to be Dublin and possibly Dublin by 10 or maybe even more. What was the Tyrone feeling heading into that Sunday in Croke Park?
The previous 3 or 4 years, our feeling would have been that we could win the All-Ireland, because with the greatest respect to that Dublin team, there were several household names on it, but we didn't see them as the superpower of Dublin teams in the past. And yes, they had ridden over a couple of great All-Ireland semi-finals in a few years previous to that, and had been beaten by a couple of good Ulster teams. But listen, we had come on the back of 3 All-Ireland under-21 final appearances, winning 2 of them, and you have the Canada and the Cush factor, and for us there was probably an inherent belief in what we could do, and having overcome Galway in the semi-final, we were coming in slightly under the radar. The Donegal, Derry and Down thing didn't really faze us, because they were different types of teams, maybe more household names. So listen, we weren't probably as well known, and we probably weren't as well regarded as to what we could do, but we thought we had our matchups done right, and look, as I'm sure we'll cover, things didn't pan out on the day, but we fully expected to be as competitive as we were, and look, the margins are fine on any given day at that level, so it was just unfortunate the way it worked out, but going into the game we were fully confident that we could compete,
Charlie, that was one of the criticisms I seem to remember from the Dublin side around that time, is that it was a collection of really good names, of really good players, but it was a matter of getting everybody to gel and getting everyone to work towards a common cause that may have been the final stumbling block for you along the road.
I wouldn't really buy into that. I thought at the time, it was often said about us that we'd no leaders, and I didn't buy into that either. The truth of the matter is that there was 15 leaders. Everyone leads himself, and everyone is his own person, and everyone has a say in the way the team has been run, in regards that if at team meetings no one voice was louder or more important than the other voice, and number 27 on the panel was equally as important as number 1. But we had 91, we had the 4 in a row. 92 we got beaten in the final. 93 we had a great game against Derry and we fell foul of them, and in 94 down beat us. So we knew it going into that season that we were a really good footballing team. We knew we were very close to walking up the steps of Croke Park. We just needed to get a little bit of luck and running. We needed to probably not miss a penalty, and hopefully not get anyone sent off. But thankfully we didn't miss the penalty, but we got somebody sent off. But eventually he saw us fit to go off. But no, he says we went in, and I wouldn't have said that we didn't lack belief or anything like that. We knew the failings that we had in the previous All-Irelands, and we knew mistakes that we made, and we identified them, and like all things, you plug one hole and another hole appears, and that was what was happening with us, year on year. But thankfully in 95 didn't go perfectly. The whole season didn't go perfectly for us, but it doesn't go perfectly for any team. Every team, even when you win an All-Ireland, you said, well, we could have done this better, we could have done that better, and we came out in 95 a better team than at the start of 95, because we had the experience of the win, and Pat had modified our training to such an extent that he knew exactly when we're going to start training the following year. It was Pat's belief, because we were probably the first team to take the science end into our physical training, and at our training sessions everything was recorded. All our times was recorded, our performance levels and all that, and Pat could see from the graphs that were given to him that we peaked a month before the All-Ireland final.
Right.
So it was Pat's decision that we would start training a month later than the previous year. But as we now know that Pat didn't stay on the following year, because there was difference of opinion himself and the county board, and Pat and his committee resigned.
How did that kind of stuff settle with the squad? Because you would have been kind of old school, like if we think back to 83 and nearly getting on then, and progressing all throughout the 80s and into the 90s as well. Like footballing was an ever-changing landscape. Sport is generally anyway.
Absolutely.
But the fact that sports science was edging into things then, how did the older members of the squads take to that kind of stuff? Was it like, we'll do whatever it takes to get over the line, we'll kind of, we'll go along with it, or was there a deal of scepticism among you?
No, there wasn't any deal of scepticism among us for the science end of things and training. There probably was when the psychologists came along, because now we were talking about our innermost feelings to somebody who we got to know eventually very well, but we didn't really know him at the start, obviously. And that, to me, I found that difficult. I'm a sort of private person. I keep things to myself as much as I can, and I bottle things up. And probably someone will tell you that's exactly the person who needs a psychiatrist. And he helped some people. Tom was a great man. He helped a lot of us. Did he help me? I probably wouldn't have thought so, because I'm my own greatest critic. If we fail, we fail because of me. If we win, we've won because the team collectively have played better than the opposition. But so to that end, yeah, probably I did need him more than anyone else, but I would probably want to use him the least.
What was the preparation like Tyrone-wise, Seamus? Was there dietitians, sports scientists, sports psychologists getting involved in the Tyrone team with you, with Art McCrory and Eugene McKenna back then?
Actually, Art had a vast knowledge of competing in Ulster football, and he had been with Tyrone in '86 in the Ireland final. So, yeah, we done the usual. Not too sure about the dietitians now. Maybe we hadn't gone to that level, but we had the psychologist room. We had a fellow, John Kramer, with us, who was excellent, and very much to what Charlie alluded to there. There were different personalities who carried with them their different trends and ways of going on, and deep thinkers and overthinkers maybe, but he got to know us well on an individual basis and on a team basis. And yes, he was there for a chat. He could identify certain people that he would like to talk to more, and vice versa. And so it was a help. Now, I'm not sure very much about how that translates itself onto the pitch, actually, because just as Charlie had said, I would be very much of the opinion, that a lot of the fellas on the pitch, well, if they lose, it's because I didn't play well. If we win, it's because we all played well. And that dynamic, I think, exists among a lot of teams nowadays, but psychology is definitely a help. I believe it has helped people, because it's hard to balance the family commitment and the life commitment along with your sport, and to get that balance right in an ever-increasing demand on you is tough. So we put a lot of preparation into it. We really, really did, as much as I suppose any team could then. And as I said before, then it comes down to a coin toss, a decision here or there, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic that you mentioned, that both of you actually had the mental side of things down, because we regard it as something that's slightly modern in the game when you see the talk of Caroline Currid and the work that she's done with the Limerick Hurlers most recently, and then going back with the other sides, including the Dubs that she's worked with too. You kind of think of it as a modern phenomena, but for a team of 1995 to be in touch with that kind of stuff, and essentially I suppose it frees you up mentally. Talking about stuff makes you park it behind you for 1 minute and lets you go out on the pitch, notionally go out and perform better, and as a freer kind of individual, I guess.
Yeah, you said, and I'm sure, as Jamie said, some people did buy into it and some people didn't. I think we may have been tried previously by some things, I'm not sure, but certainly it was in its embryonic stages when in 95. The other parts of the training there was no problem getting buying into the physical end of things, and the recording of your times and your graphs and your differentials and all this, and then they start looking at the colour of your P, and then when they start doing that, now here, come on, I'm giving this one up, I'm retiring soon. But we used to have dietitians coming in, they talk to you and all this, and literally, yeah, okay, it's grand for a week, but I'm not going to be doing this all summer, but nowadays everything is different.
Yeah.
The guys are tended to they're meeting so often, they're training 4 or 5 times a week. Like we basically trained Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning, and if we had a game Sunday, so be it, but you generally only played once every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we weren't near as conditioned as the guys are today. Like the sacrifices that the guys have to make is absolutely astronomical compared to what we had to do. I
can't remember whether it was you or whether it was Seamus and Tyrone. There was like a 5-week gap, I think, between it would have been Tyrone. There was a 5-week gap, I think, between the semi-final and the final. That'll show you how the football championship has changed. I mean, you played on the 13th of August, and then it was 17th of September before you played again, Seamus. Yeah,
that's right. There was a big gap, and at that stage in our own county we were at a standstill, obviously. Now, I was playing with Carrickmore, and we were lucky enough at that stage to have the top club side along with Errigal Kieran, and so everything was at a standstill, but we had a superior squad in Carrickmore, so they were going on winning league games around them, without any county players. But it did come to a standstill, and that was more about how unique it was for Tyrone to get to an All-Ireland back then than anything else. The whole county kind of shut down in preparation for this All-Ireland because there's no such thing as a back door, and Super 8s or no repetitive nature of football and all of this. So it was a provincial winner, an Ulster champion, had got through an All-Ireland semi-final, and now the gap was no big deal. It was just you were waiting for that final. So look, it was there was a lot of romance about the way the draw was in that time. To be an Ulster champion was a very, very tough thing. To be back-to-back Ulster champions was even better. And to get to a final was a showpiece for us. So the county treated it as such.
Yeah. What was the atmosphere in and around the county like that week? Because, as you mentioned, getting to Croke Park was not necessarily an alien thing, but it didn't happen as often as it does for sides this time around. We hear of teams back in the day preparing, having loudspeakers playing down at training. I think this has gone back a few years to try and get them used to the Croke Park roar as they come back out onto the pitch. Like it's coming out and seeing the canal end decked in red and white as it was that day, Seamie. It's got to be a huge thing. Is there any preparing for that roar as you come out onto the pitch, really?
Actually, we weren't or didn't discuss the situation regarding the final as being prepare for this, prepare for that. Would you believe it? A lot of the fellows on that team had, albeit at underage level, minor and under 21 level, had a serious amount of experience. Now that doesn't translate to what happens on All-Ireland final day, but we knew that we'd be a very passionate county, and we knew that Tyrone supporters they're very passionate, but they're quite arrogant. They're full of belief, and whilst that might not always dictate that you win the game, they're full of belief. This week will be no different, And so the place came to a standstill, and there was cows painted and cars painted and roads painted and faces painted. So it was carnival time. And when you look back at it now, this week will be no different. The condition of the players are isolated and kept away now. At this stage they are. But, the county just are ready to come en masse down here. And in fairness to Dublin, that's what they bring as an opposition. I mean, Dublin bring a history, they bring a superiority in everything they do. And I fully admire that. I know a lot of people are Dublin this, Dublin that. I've talked to Charlie before and that a few months ago, and you can have nothing but respect for Dublin, be it their crowd, their people, their Gaels, their football team. It's up to others to aspire to be like that, rather than to look for ways to bring Dublin down. The way you bring Dublin down is to try to do it on the pitch,
That's the kind of ideal scenario for you, I guess, Charlie, that kind of mutual respect coming into a final like that.
Well, I think in Gaelic football and indeed in Gaelic games, there is that mutual respect among counties. There's rivalry, and there has to be rivalry. Yes, there's going to be a combative and a competitive nature to the game on Sunday, and we know there's an edge between these two teams, and there'll be a bit of needle on Sunday, I imagine also. But as with all GAA people, once the game is over, you shake hands, you walk away, you have a beer, and you talk about the old times. And particularly, like Shane just alluded to there, we met a few months ago, is when your playing career ends, you really be able to get on better with your old foes, with your new friends, and that's what GAA is all about. I was struck in the last few months that we were doing this thing for AIB with the rivalry, and both Harry Redknapp and Gianluca Vialli were absolutely amazed at how much the GAA was such an inherent part of the community and Irish life, and it struck them more so. We take it for granted, but we shouldn't take something it's so natural for us. We should never take that for granted, because it is a huge part. It's in our DNA. We've said this so many times, and one begs to think, what would the country be like without the GAA?
Yeah, it's one thing that strikes me from talking to people who've played in finals in particular, whether it's hurling finals or whether it's because I'm thinking back to Daithí Regan going to the Clare Hotel in '95, for instance, to go and I suppose celebrate with them, even though he was an opposition player with Offaly on the day. There's an element of that as well, whereby not only do teams, when you would have had your marked your year in Croke Park and all that, when your Jubilee year, the teams kind of get together, I suppose, every year. I've kind of seen with other All Ireland winners as well, with Dublin back in the day, in the 70s in particular. But opponents from a specific day in a final, they tend to have a bond as well.
They do, yeah, and that's true. And it's funny. the 1983, which you alluded to earlier on, with the 12, when we had 3 and they had 1 sent off.
You still get together with your opponent, your jocks bottoms.
We I wish at that moment again. What we had a 25th anniversary in 08, and we went down to Westport for 4 to 5 days before coming back to Croke Park for the weekend for the All Ireland final, and there was a bit of a divide between Galway and Dublin from that game. Right. And that is the only game I think that there was a divide that any of the games have been involved in. And Tommy Drum, to his greatness, actually put out the hand of friendship to the Galway guys, and they said, listen, we're going to be down playing golf in Ballinroe. We'd love for you guys to come down to meet up, and we'll have a bit of a drink and a bit of dinner. And thankfully, a good number come down. It was the only time I know that there was a little bit of a divide after the game.
Sign,
yeah, well, and one could understand why what had happened on the previous day or on the match day. But other than that, even all the battles we had against Meath, which were very intense battles, and sometimes a game of football would break out, that afterwards, when we all get together, we play golf, we meet up, we shake hands, we're friends. When we have,
sure, they're neighbours of yours after that as well.
Well, I'm actually living in Meath longer than I'm living in Dublin now, so I can't really say anything. I have to be good to them.
Shamey, that kind of relationship would be reciprocated on the Tyrone side, I guess, as well.
Yeah, it would be. It would be very much as far as linking up with some of the Dublin fellas, and getting to know them. I mean, I know that the guys came up to Dungannon a few years back to playing an exhibition match for a little guy, Cian Corrigan, that had died, and so to a man almost, the whole lot came up and we mingled and chatted, and so over the years you get to fall in with them. Now just like certain other counties, I'm not sure that we'll ever be doing lunch or dinner or golf with some of the Armagh or Derry fellas, because, as neighbours, sometimes the best hand of friendship wasn't extended out to you and vice versa. But that was more about Ulster football than anything else, But yeah, whenever we're very much in agreement that whenever the game is over, it was what it was, and you shake hands, and that's it. If you can sign it to the history bin, and if you can't deal with it at the time, well then, or be prepared for what might come, then just leave it. And that's why I suppose a lot of the guys playing now are well conditioned in their heads, even. I don't think there's anything that they haven't prepared for any eventuality. So I believe that they're mentally extremely strong now, and they're prepared to take the thing to the edge, So yeah, it's great. It's great. The environment that GAA is played in now is fantastic. You only have to see attendances, maybe not at Croke Park recently, but attendances around the country, and the camaraderie and the chat and the banter. It's a culture, it's a lifestyle now.
Shamey, before I ask him about it, what are your memories of Charlie sending off?
Charlie done what every good con man should have done. He walked away. He wasn't confrontational. He walked away. He didn't think he was sent off. He didn't know he was sent off, and the man just ran back to his position. So I can recall Paul Devlin a couple of minutes later standing, and I'll just not go over the expletives, but he said, to the referee, "You sent that off, did you not? You did send him off." And then Paddy Russell just stopped and looked up and gazed around for a wee while, and then just went over, and I was standing there and I goes, "Jesus, maybe he was sent off." So at that time there was a lot of commotion on the sideline because of what happened. And look, as I say, you can design it to a wheelie bin, but there was no real emphasis on yellow cards and red cards and black cards, which in my view was a brilliant thing. But I think Pat O'Neill got involved in it as well, and maybe he was talking Paddy Russell and Charlie. Brilliant, absolute brilliant, just decided, well, go back onto the pitch, and so come here. Pay your money and take your chance, so he done that. Now, you'll have to ask Charlie about whether or not he thought he was sent off, but listen, I don't have any real opinion on it. If he had scored a goal and 3 points now, I'd have been really, really hacked off.
I don't
think he had done enough damage already at that stage.
I don't. The only opinion that mattered on the day was Paddy Russell's, and he seemed to be fairly clear at the time watching the footage back that he was sending you off. Charlie and you just kind of weaseled your way back onto the pitch.
Well, see, Paddy came over to me and he says, Charlie, he says, listen, he's a 5 points up. If I leave, if you stay on the field, you're going to win this game by about 10 points. So he says, I've got to even it up and send you off. So would you do me a favour and go off? I said, Paddy, I'm not going off now. You can send me off later on. And he came back 2 minutes later and sent me off. Like, it was very unfair on me. It was very unfair.
The actual incident itself, like, it's Fergal Logan goes in. Basically, you're going in for a challenge on the sideline, and Logan comes in and knees you in the back.
No, I've been fouled.
You've been fouled.
I'm lying on the ground.
You're prostrate on the ground, let's say, and Fergal Logan comes in with the knee in the back. You get up to challenge him. You're being held back in the process of doing this because you're looking to stick the head in him.
Well, I was actually going to.
You weren't going up to say to have a conversation with him and go, excuse me, Fergal, what exactly?
Well, I was because that's exactly how. Can you mind, please? That's exactly what I was going to do.
You've been awful hard on him.
And no, it's funny. And the funny aspect of it, actually, which people don't know about, is that when I went to get as you go off to get your suspension off the board, you go in, you just stand in front of them, and the chairman is reading out the referee's report, and this is 3 weeks after the event, and he says, and the committee have accepted the referee's report, and we're declaring Dublin as the All-Ireland champions. This is 3 weeks after the event. He says, you try telling the people in Dublin that they're not All-Ireland champions, and could we have our cup back, please? But no, that was a very funny moment, and I was looking at him with incredulity. I said, what are you saying? You know?
Yeah. But at the time, like, did Russell say to you, because there's versions of the story you tell him, like, oh, this is my last game, Paddy, you can't send me off.
No, I never said that. I actually didn't remember what I said to him. And Paddy and I met up about 4 or 5 years ago up in Eden Dark in or Cookstown up in Tyrone. And that was the first time we'd met since 95. And of course,
it was the first time, actually, Charlie. It was the first time Paddy was back in Tyrone.
he was allowed back in Tyrone.
Escort from Auckland.
I was just going to say, Seamus, because he's one of the few referees to come away from an All-Ireland final and managed to piss off both sides.
Incredible, but it was as it looks now, looking back at it, it was a pantomime of errors. Never mind that, but I suppose we'll move on to the point that never was, or and unless you play in Croke Park and you know what the story is with the ball on that kind of surface, bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, and the more I look back at it, the more the point probably would have been given every day of the week. But you hear back, his reasons for not allowing it, and I've rarely heard that it was because he picked it off the ground, or the point wasn't allowed, or it goes down to all sorts, but as I say, the margins are fine. Now, I haven't run into Paddy Russell yet. I know there's a couple of appreciation societies up in Tyrone for him, so they're going to try and link up with him this weekend. But listen, he was doing a job the same as everybody else, and there was a lot of bad feeling at the time, but he hadn't his best day now. Definitely not for both teams, but for one in particular, I'd say. Was there a keen sense of aggrievement on the Tyrone side following that day? There was. God save us, you've put all your eggs in this basket, and we didn't have the luxury of the experiences that the Dublin guys would have had, and notwithstanding that, but we had got through a very tough Ulster Championship, and to go down and meet the Dubs was a big thing, and it's just an inevitable task that these referees have now, and they are human beings. I get that. But with that great occasion comes a great responsibility, and I thought that day, in the main the game was refereed okay, don't get me wrong, but if you looking back at it now, if you even considered, notwithstanding Charlie done what he done, and that's it, and anybody else like him made a chance to it, but looking back at it, to have a man sent off in a final like that, and then resend them off, a lot of referees, would look back at that and say, that was absolutely crazy. And in the course of that game, when that happened, the easy thing for Paddy Russell to do, and this might appear me looking out of rose-tinted glasses, but the easy thing for Paddy Russell to do would have been to allow that point and bring 70,000 people back to Croke Park in a fortnight's time. That would have been the logical, easy thing to do. Might have been what the Dublin men wanted, obviously, but again, the margins were tight. Where there was a bit of controversy, it was very easy for him to blow that and to say, right, let's all come back and do this again. Everybody's a winner. We were aggrieved, I suppose, that didn't happen, and the more time went on, we were more aggrieved because it was an easy get out of jail card for Paddy Russell. That didn't happen. And then, as far as I'm concerned personally, you leave it, it's gone. Whereas last year's snow, bang, that's it. But as time goes on, it hurts. It's tough because, you get that close, and it did come down to a referee. Well, that decision did at the end of the day, but it was an easy decision for him to give that point. And when he didn't, a lot of us drew our own conclusions, but as I say, it was gone. Dublin had done more than enough that year and in the previous 4 or 5 to win in All-Ireland. So they got it, and we didn't. And
in terms of performance, Seamie, were there any regrets on the Tyrone side?
Absolutely. Well, from a personal point of view, I would have regrets. I was marking a very evasive character, Desi Farrell, and I was trying to balance my positioning and men coming through half-backs, etc., with tailing him, and he was cute in his movement. Look, I would say, and I can't speak, I've talked to some of the lads over the years about it, but it's not a nice memory to talk about, but a lot of us underperformed that day. Obviously, the wee man in full forward didn't underperform, but a lot of us underperformed. And it's a bad occasion to pick to underperform, but be that the Dublin men had their homework done, or be that some of us froze. I mean, a point or 2 points from any other man apart from Jody, and you might have got across the line. I think the biggest thing was the Adrian Cush loss on the Tuesday before the final, with the ligaments, and that knocked the socks out of us too, because Cush was, at that stage, as fine a player in scoring points and taking frees as Castlehaven was, and knocked the stuffing out of us, and we couldn't afford, again, a team like Dublin to be without anybody. But look, you look back, and as I say, you pay your money and you take your chance, and that's it. And we came close, but not close enough.
Yeah, Charlie, you came close to not making that game yourself.
Yeah, I was training on the Thursday beforehand, doing my usual stuff in there, and kicking some frees, going through the normal routine. I was there with Wayne 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and finishing off just clipping over a few 14-yard frees and pulled the groin muscle. And I was in Erin's oil, and I knew I was in trouble. I rang Pat immediately. He says, "Go home," I said, "Take it easy, see you tonight." Went down training, and I couldn't run. I didn't even get out on the field. And went back on Saturday morning, had another go, and was really, really struggling. I knew I didn't think I was going to be playing. And Pat says, "No, we leave it till tomorrow. Leave it. We'll see how it is." And Pat had told me, I think was it a Saturday? He says, "We'll give you an injection and we sort it out." So I went, that's okay. Then Pat's going to give me an injection. Pat's going to sort this out, So 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the game, we're going with Pat. I says, "I'm ready with that injection." "I don't do injections," he says. "I've never given anybody a painkiller injection to play a football match. Either you're fit to play or you're not. So are you fit to play or are you not?" I said, "Well, let me have a run around outside and I'll let you down." And if you look at the pre-match photograph,
yeah, I'm
the only one in the photograph with a tracksuit on, because I wasn't even sure at that juncture whether I was going to start the game. So I went out and I had a good run. And I was a bit better. I was a lot better than I was on the Saturday. But I went to take a free, and I normally only touch the ball twice before the game, and usually only once in the game. But I kick a bum ball over the bar out of my hands, and I take one close-in free. And I took a close-in free from about 21 yards, and I didn't get the ball off the ground. And everyone knew I was injured, and the whole Hill 16, I could actually hear the intake of breath. But I said, I'm too nervous. He said, go out and play. And I remember the first free we got was about 14-yard free, halfway out towards the canal end, towards the Cusick stand. And I think McGalvin had got fouled. And as I'm walking over to him, he knew I was in trouble, and I knew this was going to be an awkward free. And he says, just knock it over the bar. And all I could think was, well, don't you just knock it over the bar and get me out of a bit of trouble, you know?
Yeah.
But thankfully it went over, and then we had the goal later on. But I was struggling. There's no doubt I was struggling big time. And while I probably was better on the day than I had been the day before, a lot better on the day than I was the day before, it wasn't perfect. And the build up to the game was really, really impacted by it. Now, I can't turn around and say it had anything to do with the performance on the day or with what happened on the day. It hadn't, but it certainly it impacted negatively on the build-up, because I was always very meticulous in the way I did things. I had the same build-up for every game, be it an All-Ireland final, be the first round of championship.
Well, I'm just thinking back to your run up for frees. I mean, you were the one of the first Gaelic footballers that I can remember had a set almost like a Johnny Wilkinson kind of run up to frees. You'd take a few steps back, take a couple to the left, and then away you go.
That came from rugby, because Barney was the free taker before I was, and I took the frees for the club. I wasn't even the main free taker in the club. A fella called Christy Cox was the free taker in the club, and Barney got injured in the 89 Leinster final, I think, and I was asked to take a few frees, and I didn't take them. The two I got were actually 50s, and I didn't hit them very well. And then Barney came back, and around 91 I knew Barney's time was coming to an end, so I said, if I'm going to take these frees, I'm going to do it well. And I perfected this sort of routine. And I looked at, it was actually Grant Fox, who was the All Blacks, and it was a fellow called Davy Dodds, I think he was the Scottish lad. So we're looking at both of them and the way they were meticulous in their preparation to take a kick. So I eventually said, I'm going to find a pre-shot routine, try and find the same position every time, kick the ball the same way every time, and then the ball should travel at the same height, the same trajectory, at the same arc, and therefore now I have a way to kick the ball. And over the period of about 3 or 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, it just developed into this exact routine, which was 7 back, 3 to the left, lick the lips and rub the hands, pull the nicks or whatever, and then take 3 steps, another little dance to the left, and then just move in towards the ball.
Every young fella in Dublin copied that. I'm counting myself among them. I was playing football out in the road in Clonsilla, and I was doing the exact same thing. It's
funny that somebody said to me the other day, recently about it, and he says, "What did you do?" And I couldn't remember, because I used to lick my lips and wipe in my and I did it twice. But everyone was sort of licking both hands, and I went, I don't think that's right. Did I lick both hands, or did I lick? I think I only did one. So I actually haven't seen anything recently to have a look at to see what I actually did.
You'd essentially invented your own football version of the Macarena. There's a whole set of moves. Everybody tried to copy it, but nobody could get it right.
Well, not me, All-American Hertig actually was labelled Charlie's Dance. So and that of course, and you can imagine what happened in the club and in the fire station.
Seamus, go on.
I said it's all in the hips, the rhythm.
I wish. The hips have a lot more rhythm to them now at the moment.
The post-match banquet probably had to do more with them and the hips and all that kind of thing. Seamus, you were playing the half-back line that day for Tyrone, playing the half-forwards for Dublin with some young fellow by the name of Jim Gavin. What do you remember of him as a player?
Slippery as a needle. That comes to mind. I was very workmanlike, Jim. He was a wee hunter, break ball. Always kind of, he was a supplier to maybe an inside forward line, and again, very evasive as a player, quite hard to mark, very energetic, very fit, Jim, I don't know Jim well enough to know what kind of a guy he is now, but when I've met him in the past, he's always been a complete gentleman. He seemed to be a very quiet character, and maybe, as we were saying earlier, takes all sorts of personalities, but he seemed very, very militant, very precise in what he'd done, very concentrated and focused, and while maybe never scoring a goal and 2 or 3 points every game, was contributing to quite a bit from what I can remember having watched him that year and the previous years, and so we didn't know for sure what the Dublin lineup was going to be. We had a fair idea, so I was just told to pick up Desi and send her forward, and then I remember Jim was on one side. and maybe Paul Clark was on the other. And they were tough unit to crack now because they were experienced, and as Charlie was saying earlier on, they'd come through battling in Ulster teams for 3 or 4 years previous, and that probably taught them a lot of lessons, and we were just a little bit more naive on that day looking back, and that Dublin unit maybe didn't get the credit that they should have for the 3 or 4 years previous, whereas we were very much new kids on the block. But no, Jim was a tasty player now, definitely.
What kind of, because we have one image of Jim, I suppose, as a personality now, because in the media, like, Jim can be very guarded, I think is probably the best way you'd speak about him, in that he genuinely doesn't give much away. He probably doesn't want to give much away, and that's his wont. What was he like back then mentally? Like, was there much personality around him? I know he's a military Air Force man. That obviously feeds into his personality a lot, and would have done at the time. Was there, I'm looking back at the youthful photos of him from 95, and he seems a little bit shy and retiring even then.
Well, I wouldn't say he was shy retiring. I was actually talking to a reporter earlier on, and I have this undying image of Jim in my head, and it's post 95 after the final, and we're in Hanlon's bar, and he's pointing his left hand, and he has a huge smile on his face, an absolute, and it was a lovely image. I still have it in my head. Don't see an awful lot of that from Jim now. That's because he is, and he must have changed because of the managerial experience that he had. Must have changed him slightly. And you're quite right. He is guarded. He would view information as power, and if he has information and you have that information, you're as powerful as he is, and he doesn't want to share it all with you. He was, and if you're quite correct also, being a military pilot, he does things by the numbers. If he's in trouble in an aeroplane, he refers to a manual. This is what I do in such a situation, and I'm sure he has brought that in to his managerial experience. He is showing that when there's something going wrong, we have a plan for that. We can revert to this, or we can go to that, but we have plans, and the plans are going to will and have up to this time anyway have proven fruitful. So when you're talking about pressure, and people do talk about pressure, and I always say this about Jim, pressure is not winning the All-Ireland final on Sunday. Pressure for Jim is being in an aircraft with 300 people behind you and there's a problem with the aircraft. That's pressure. So winning a game has its own type of pressure, but winning any game is not the most important thing in the world. There's far more things more important to Jim, more important to me, more important to all the players on the field than winning on Sunday. It's hugely important, don't get me wrong, but it's not the most important thing in the world. Of
course. Seamie, we'll bring it home by asking how you think Sunday will go from a Tyrone perspective.
Listen, I think, as I said, the margins are fine. I do believe there's a few things just I will say. I do believe that people talk about Dublin and what's at their disposal and this and that and how can we compete at that. I don't buy any of that, to be honest with you. I believe Dublin are the benchmark at the minute because I believe they have more good players than any other team. That's not a certain amount of good players. They have more good players. I believe Tyrone are as well conditioned. I believe Tyrone are as good on the ball. I believe Tyrone strategically will be every bit as good. But the margins are fine, and whether or not, familiarity breeds contempt, they often say, and whether or not, someone will beat Dublin. If it's not on Sunday, it will be next year or the year after or the year. That's sport, that's life. No one wins forever. Now, whether or not that's more to do with Dublin dropping their standards or somebody else coming to the well and taking the water off them, I don't know, but the margins are very fine, and I believe Tyrone can stand toe-to-toe here. Whether or not they have 26, 27 players of the same ability that Dublin have, I'm not sure. I think that's coming. It may be too soon for it, but it's going to take something to change. If you gave me the same chess match that they had in Omagh a month or two ago, I would take your arm off for it, whereby it took a defender to come up and a couple of 1-2s and the ball was in the back of the net. Give me that chess match any day of the week. 10 points all, 12 points all, 13 points all with 5-10 minutes to go. And then it's just an individual piece of brilliance. Hopefully not a refereeing decision. Then it comes to a fine margin. If Tyrone don't look these lads in the white of their eyes and say, I am taking you as an individual to the ends of the earth for the next 70 minutes, we will die a slow death. We really will die a slow death, because these fellas are used to every scenario. I believe they're a very patient team, this Dublin team. But if I'm being honest, I believe Tyrone have improved more than any other county this year, including Dublin. I do believe they have improved an awful lot. They have star performers. So I said the other night in a show that I believe if the two teams played their best, Dublin would win. I still believe that. But hopefully we have to do something. Something has to happen so that it becomes a more even playing field. And if Dublin maybe don't perform, if Tyrone get their matchups right and get a goal or get an early goal or two and make it very difficult for Dublin, well and good. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot in it. I'm going to be honest with you. If I was a betting man, which occasionally I've done in the past, of course I would back Dublin. But this Tyrone team, the good thing is there's huge belief in their own ability, and in fairness, they will have left no stone unturned for Sunday. Someone had to play Dublin this year because they were always getting to the final. Tyrone are the best of the bunch, and look, it's a fairy tale pairing. I hope for Tyrone's sake that they make a game of it. I hope for GAA that they make a game of it, and we'll see how it goes. But as I said, if the two teams go out and give it everything, I would say Dublin will win this, and let's hope something else happens. We're bound to have a man in that Tyrone squad that'll be sent off and won't go off. We're bound to find him.
Charlie, that's the case for the prosecution. What's the case for the defence?
I agree with everything that Shamey said. They've improved more than anyone this year, from their game against Monaghan all the way through to where they are now. I thought they were sunk ship when they played against Donegal. When Donegal got the goal, I thought they were history, and they showed great character and great resilience to come back and snatch that game from Donegal. They're coming to Croke Park. They've got a great manager. We know he's one of the greatest managers ever to take to a football field, but we have one of the greatest teams, we believe, that ever take to a football field. But that's no guarantee of success, and there's nobody in Dublin, in this Dublin team, who are thinking anything other than the competition that is going to be there for Sunday. There are a few Dublin supporters out there that think this is a stroll. This is anything but a stroll. This is going to be a huge tactical battle, and Tyrone are going to make it very tactical. Dublin will have to be very patient, as Shamey just said, and pick their chances. What I do believe is that if Tyrone have to beat Dublin, Tyrone are going to have to get a couple of goals, and to get a couple of goals, they're going to have to commit more players forward than they have in some of the games. They seem to have this way of they play with Colm Kavanagh just in front of their full back line, and then they have Burns at centre back. With 15 minutes to go, Burns is generally taken away. Colm pushes out and to put another forward on, and they seem to want to win the game in the last 15 minutes. And you know what? It's been successful for them, and possibly that is the way. If they are to beat Dublin, that might be the way to do it. To snatch victory, be ahead at one stage only, which is when the final whistle is blown. And to that end, this team is exceptionally capable of doing that for Tyrone. But I just feel the Dublin team are just so good. They have a great bench to call upon if anyone's performance level drops. And when that happens and you get someone going off and it's either Costello or McMenamin or Macaulay or Brogan coming on, it must be disheartening for the opposition. And because of that, I think we'll scrape it. I hope we scrape it.
Right. So
people are talking. I've said it. I think we'll win by 4. I'll take 1.
Right. Shamey, thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us and going back in time 23 years with us this afternoon / this evening.
Pleasure.
Cheers. And Charlie Redmond as well, the former Dublin footballer, and Erin Zyle, of course, a vested interest in the latest series of AIB's The Toughest Rivalry. Fans can tune into the epic finale of the 8-part YouTube series tomorrow night when Harry Redknapp and Gianluca Vialli face off, as Vialli heads up Charlie's own Erin Zyle and Harry takes charge of Castlehaven GAA in West Cork. It's the highly anticipated rematch of the 1998 All-Ireland semi-final, left both teams with unfinished business. For exclusive content and behind-the-scenes action from Gianluca's journey, follow AIB GAA on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Snapchat, and of course AIB.A/GAA. Football shows on the way next.